7, enacting the audiology, blah, blah, blah. Yes, that word there, and speech language pathology interstate compact. Well, I don't know why it is when I do that one word, I just turn it around all the time. And our, Scott, if you'll take and give us an overview of the bill, I'd appreciate it.
Happy to. Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon, committee. Senate Bill 77 comes to you sponsored by the Senate Committee on Public Health and Welfare. This is another interstate compact for the licensure of a health-related profession or practice. This time it is for audiologists and speech-language pathologists. And it provides for the interstate practice of an audiologist or speech-language pathologist who is licensed in one home state and allows them to practice in other member states of the interstate compact. So as with the previous compacts, unless there are questions specifically about kind of the mechanics or the establishment of the commission or the rulemaking, or a lot of those mechanics that are identical or very similar between all of those compacts, I'll kind of gloss over those aspects and focus primarily on the substance of the compact. So the substance of the compact is that it requires each member state to recognize a license issued to an audiologist or speech language pathologist by a home state to a resident in that state and authorize that audiologist or speech language pathologist to practice that profession under a compact privilege in each of the member states of the interstate compact. It also requires each state that is a member to the compact to implement or utilize procedures for considering criminal history records of applicants for an initial privilege to practice, including the submission of fingerprints or other biometric-based information for obtaining criminal history record information from the Federal Bureau of Investigation or the state agency, in the case of Kansas, the KBI, receiving that criminal history record information from those agencies. It also requires each member state to require an applicant to obtain or retain a license in their home state and meet that home state's qualifications for licensure or renewal of licensure and other applicable state laws in order to hold a compact privilege. It also requires an audiologist or speech language pathologist to meet some minimum requirements for licensure so that no state can have less than those requirements. Those are detailed starting on page 4 of the bill. Some educational requirements for those professions, some requirements for postgraduate or supervised practicum or supervised experience, passing a national examination, holding an active unencumbered license, having not been convicted or found guilty or entered into an agreed disposition of a felony related to the practice of that profession, and have a valid United States Social Security or National Practitioner Identification Number. And those requirements are largely repeated for speech language pathologists starting on page 5 of the bill. It provides that the privilege to practice under the interstate privilege is derived from the home state license, which is to say if there is no home state licensure, then a person does not have the privilege to practice under the interstate compact. The compact does provide that a state can issue a single state license that would only authorize the person to practice in that home state and would not grant the otherwise accompanying interstate compact's privilege to practice. The compact also specifically calls out the privilege to practice telehealth and provides that member states shall recognize the right of an audiologist or speech language pathologist licensed by a home state to practice that profession in any member state using telehealth under the interstate compact privilege to practice. Similar to the other interstate compacts this committee has heard, the compact also contemplates adverse action taken against a license. It authorizes the member states of the compact to take adverse action against a person's privilege to practice within the member state, but reserves only to the home state the power to take adverse action against their initial license issued by the home state, which is to say one of those individuals licensed in the state of Kansas could be limited from practicing in another compact state, but only the state of Kansas would have the authority to take action against their initial licensure. This compact is a little bit different than the others that you have heard because this compact has not yet, I believe, become effective. This compact becomes effective upon being enacted by 10 states. I believe 6 states have done so to date. There are another 12 or 15 or somewhere in that ballpark states that have proposed but not yet enacted legislation to implement the interstate compact. So upon the 10th state enacting the compact and the compact becoming effective, the interstate compact would take effect at that time. The balance of the bill is, like I said before, a lot of the same kind of mechanics and background procedural provisions of the interstate compact to kind of make it work once it is in force and effect. So, Madam Chair, I would be happy to answer any questions the committee has.
Thank you, Scott. Questions, Representative Lynn?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So when someone is licensed in multiple states, do they already have to pick a home state?
Yes, Representative. So if somebody were to have a license already kind of individually through a number of states, they would designate the home state that is their state of residence to be their home state for purposes of the compact.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Committee, further questions of the reviser? All right, seeing none, thank you very much, Scott. Appreciate that. First proponent I have is Susie Turner, Executive Director of the Kansas Speech Language Hearing Association. Welcome to committee. You'll probably need to turn that mic on up there. So.
There we go. Okay, very good. Well, good afternoon. Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Chair, for having me. And to members of the committee, thanks for having me. It's great to see people in person. It's great. So I'm here, obviously, in support of SB 77, the Interstate Compact. I am the Executive Director of the Kansas Speech Language Hearing Association, and I'm also a practicing audiologist in Wichita at Ascension Via Christi. We have about 1,000 members who are SLPs and audiologists statewide. This compact would allow practitioners in our state to hold one license in their home state and then apply for a privilege to practice in other states that belong to the compact. Compacts are not new to our state. Physicians, nurses, and emergency medical personnel already have compacts in place in the state of Kansas, and these are working well. This compact would operate very similarly to those already in place. So why would we want to do this? Why would we want to join this compact? Several reasons, and I'll give you a few examples. So SLPs and audiologists who live near state borders can practice in both states more easily. It is noteworthy that Oklahoma has passed this legislation already, and both Nebraska and Colorado have introduced legislation this session. Another example, clients who move out of state can continue to work with the same clinician. I believe you received written testimony more about this. Gentry Taylor is a parent of a child who has multiple disabilities, including hearing loss and a speech disorder. And they're a military family. So every time this military family gets relocated, they have to set up services with a new SLP. This can be very troubling to both the child and sometimes the clinician who's grown attached to that patient or child. But what happens every time they move is the new clinician has to get to know the student or the child and know their needs and set new goals and figure out what motivates them and all of these things. With this compact, as military kids move from place to place, they could keep the same SLP. Clinicians who move out of state can continue to work with their clients. So say it's not the client who moves, but the clinician who moves. And my colleague Allison Winter will talk more about this in her testimony, and she will especially discuss military spouses and what it's like when a military member and his or her family relocates and has to get licensed again. This bill also facilitates telehealth, which is important for two reasons. You may know that there's a huge shortage of SLPs or speech language pathologists across the state of Kansas, especially in rural Kansas, which means that students aren't getting the services required by their IEPs. You have written testimony from Chris Pedersen, which goes into greater detail about the shortages of SLPs and how this compact could alleviate those. The next point is about specialized treatment. SLPs and audiologists are generalists by training. So think about your family practice doctor, and I know we have one in here. He or she knows a fair amount about a lot of different things, but when you need specialized treatment, he or she sends you to someone who has extensive training in that particular disease or condition. This may mean, if you're a Kansan, that you have to travel to KU Med, or perhaps to Children's Mercy if you're a kid. Then if your condition is really rare or needs even more targeted treatment, you might go to MD Anderson in Houston for cancer treatment or to Mayo Clinic for diagnostic testing, requiring you to go out of state for some certain specialties. The same is true for SLPs and audiologists. If you have a stuttering issue, there really aren't very many SLPs who are experts in stuttering, so you might need to seek services out of state. Additionally, there aren't very many bilingual SLPs, and non-native English speakers do best when therapy is delivered in their own language, and this is often available by providers out of state. In terms of audiology, tinnitus, which you may call tinnitus, ringing in the ears, that treatment is only provided by some audiologists. Where I live in Wichita, we have one audiologist who has some training in tinnitus, but when she has a severe case, she also has to refer to audiologists either in the Kansas City area or even to Oklahoma City to provide this specialized therapy. Okay, a couple things about what this bill does not do. This does not expand our scope of practice for either SLPs or audiologists. Clinicians are bound by the rules and the regulations in the state where the client resides. This bill also does not take away the state's ability to discipline bad actors. The state licensing board remains, and it continues to have the right to investigate and discipline, or even revoke or remove the license of folks practicing in the state. This also adds public protection. This action would be reported to the Interstate Compact Commission, this adverse action, and this may mean that their privilege to practice in other states is affected, which ultimately prevents bad actors from having their license revoked in one state and picking up and moving to another state to do the same unethical or unsafe practices to other citizens. In short, passing the Interstate Compact makes it easier for clinicians to serve the clients who need their services, helps both military spouses and military kids who get relocated frequently, and protects the public from bad actors. I'm happy to stand for questions, and thank you all for your time.
All right, I think we'll get both of the testimonies, and then we'll have the committee ask questions. Thank you. Next, I have Allison Winters, Vice President, Professional Practices, Kansas Speech Language Hearing Association. It stole your earring, didn't it? Welcome to committee.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and committee members. My name is Allison Winters, and I am the Vice President of Professional Practices with ks.gov. And I've been practicing SLP for, over 20 years. But my written testimony really specifically states the time that I was a military wife. My husband, Chad, was an officer in the Air Force between the years of 2003 and 2008. Now, I only mention that because during that short time, I held 4 separate speech-language licensures all from different states. Now, it was with any military family, I mean, we moved a lot. There was a lot of moving, and, you know, we loved serving our country. We just really did. The problem I ran into was that during each move, I had to secure another state license before I could be employed again as an SLP in my new state. Now, if any of you have served in the military, you know they don't give much notice before they change your placement. Most of the time, we had about 30 days before we knew our new location. So with every move, I would begin the paperwork for my new licensure in the new state and waited, and then quickly realized I really couldn't even begin interviewing for jobs in that new state because not a single employer was willing to interview me when I didn't have an active license in their state. So my current license wasn't doing me any good. It typically took anywhere between like 6 to 8 weeks for most states to give that licensure before that whole process was completed. I was never denied a licensure. I always met every criterion that every state gave in order to secure my new license. In reality, most states' criterion are really identical, very identical. Now, the one thing, again, potential employers looked at when they were interviewing me was they were concerned. Why do you have a 2 to 3 month gap in your resume every 2 years? So the military does try to help spouses. They really do. They try to help them find new jobs. But their hands are tied in our profession because it is up to the individual states to provide licensure. So without doubt, passing Senate Bill 77 would assist military spouses who are practicing SLPs. It would just be that one less obstacle they face during such an already challenging time for them. Thank you for your time. I am open to questions.
All right, thank you. Okay, committee, you'll note that we have, you don't want to go very far in case we got questions, either one of you. We have written-only testimony by Chris Pedersen, Anna Paula Mummy, Stacy Clarkson, and Ellie France. We have, was there anyone that had expected to be called as a proponent today that I didn't call upon? All right. Committee questions for our conferees. Representative Kelly, then Representative Barker.
Thank you. And really, this question would be for either one of you. You talked about the military families moving and all, but will the compact only help you in the states that are members of the compact? I mean, right now, it wouldn't help you because there has to be 10. But then if you were moved or the child moved, would they have to moved into one of those 10 states in order for you to be able to continue to service them?
That's a great question. Yes. So ideally, eventually, we'll all belong to the compact. But right now, it won't help because the compact hasn't been enacted. We have to get it past 10 states. And so far, 6 have passed and 15 are considering it. So it'll go into effect once the 10th state. But yes, even then, it would have to be, clinician in a compact state and client in a compact state for it to be helpful.
Okay. Well, I can definitely see the benefit. My wife is a speech path, and I know that I picked the wrong profession because I should have gone in it because of the job offers that come constantly. And so I think this would help, particularly in the school system where tele-speech is almost a must in rural areas.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's a great point. Thank you.
Representative Barker.
As always, Madam Chair, the distinguished representative stole my question.
You need to raise your hand faster, Representative Barker.
Apparently, but then he complains about being a banker. I've never met a banker that couldn't get a loan from his own bank. So, but I do have just one other question, and I thought that was a very good question because you don't know where you're going in the military, and it probably will not be in that compact because they send you as far as they can send you. So I don't see where that. But you mentioned about if military kids go somewhere, get transferred, and you want to continue to keep the same therapist, and I'm assuming that's telehealth.
Yes, correct.
So you're saying that if they go to Germany, you're going to be the same therapist in the state that they've had.
Yes, and correct. And I just realized I answered something wrong to you, actually. So if the client moves to another state that's not a compact state, you can still serve that child with a license to practice. You would just have to go through the old ways of getting the license, but you could still serve that child. But yes, so it would be through telehealth. You know, if somebody moved 4 states away, you're not probably going to see them in person anymore, but it would be through telehealth.
Prior to the pandemic, you probably seen most of your clients in person, correct? Would that be correct?
Yes and no. I'm an audiologist, so yes, I definitely saw most of my clients because it's really hard to look in someone's ear through the phone.
That was my thoughts.
Yes, but for speech-language pathologists, teletherapy's been going on for at least 10 years, and a lot of that was taking place before the pandemic.
Okay, I just was thinking about an audiologist. Usually look in their ears and do other things.
Right. It depends. You know, actually, we're finding more and more ways to practice via telehealth. In fact, we can now test infant hearing from a distance because we're finding that in western states or western parts of our state, there aren't hardly any pediatric audiologists, and so we've come up with ways to be able to test them through the computer. And hooking someone on the remote side, a nurse or a CNA can do the hookup of the electrodes, and then an audiologist in Wichita or Kansas City can test them. So there are some applications for audiology, but you're right, certain things you can't make an ear mold for hearing aids from 4 hours away.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Are there further questions? All right, seeing none. Thank you, ladies, very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, committee, you will also notice that you have one opponent written only by Janice Bannon, and then you have a neutral written only by Rochelle Colombo. Are there any further questions or comments on the bill? All right, seeing none, that closes the hearing on Senate Bill 77. And if there is no objection, we'll go ahead and work Senate Bill 77. Is there objection? All right, seeing none. Representative Epley.
Madam Chair, I do have an amendment for this bill on page 19, line 13, to change the effective date from publication in the statute book to delete the word statute book and put into register.
Is there a second?
Yeah.
Seconded by Representative Barker. I almost called on Representative Armberger, but I wanted to give you a shot first.
We appreciate that, and it's also saves the state some money by making this amendment. You understand that? We save about $1,200. So I know that you had that in your mind. Not that you were trying to make a vehicle. It was a concern for the state's finances.
It's all about saving taxpayer money, Representative.
We are here to do that. Discussion on the Epley amendment. Seeing none, Representative Epley, you may close.
Aye, close.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Ayes appear to have it. Ayes do have it. Motion carries. Back on the bill. Representative Epley.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. So with that lengthy discussion and all of that, I would like to move that the committee move House Bill 70, Senate Bill 77 out favorably for passage to the floor, as I amended. Thank you.
Motion by Representative Epley, seconded by Representative Berquist. Comments, discussion on the bill. All right, seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Motion carries. All right, committee, keep an eye out for your agenda next week because there could be changes as different things pop up. Right now, Dave should have the most current revision that we have out there. And next Wednesday will be a small roundtable, and I call it small because we only have about an hour and 45 minutes to go through the roundtable discussion, not on telehealth, but on the rate parity discussion in telehealth. And that's why you'll see a smaller group of folks. And to the legislators that are up here on this row here, actually the 2 rows out here, you will be moved back so that we have our conferees up front, but there'll be nameplates in the right spot. So we are adjourned until Monday at 1:30.